Benissimo. Allora, benvenuti a tutte e a tutti a questo penultimo appuntamento del laboratorio per l'edizione di testi filosofici medievali e rinascimentali che rientra nel progetto PRIN coordinato dal professor Alessandro Palazzo dell'Università di Trento sulla prognosi medievale e in particolare sui manoscritti che tramandano testi che riguardano la divinazione naturale nel Medioevo, sia latini che arabi. Ed è il motivo per cui abbiamo come graditissimo ospite oggi il professor Amos Bertolacci, che oltre ad essere uno stimatissimo collega è anche un carissimo amico e sono veramente molto contenta di averlo qui come nostro ospite perché Amos, scusami,
Ecco, vai,
Amos
prova, prova.
veramente non ha bisogno di presentazioni. Non è soltanto molto noto per i suoi studi, soprattutto sulla tradizione manoscritta di Avicenna e anche sulle edizioni che sta conducendo sui testi di Avicenna, ma anche perché ha recentemente vinto a Berlino un premio proprio per il dialogo interreligioso, nel cui ambito Amos spende anche moltissimo del suo tempo, oltre alla sua attività di ricerca, che conoscete sicuramente, è encomiabile anche la sua attività che è riduttivo dire di divulgazione, sono apprezzati e apprezzabili i suoi interventi per il quotidiano Avvenire, sulle cui posizioni sono assolutamente sempre assolutamente d'accordo e secondo me questa è una parte importante del lavoro del nostro lavoro di professori universitari, cioè non possiamo prescindere anche da un impegno sociale e in questo Amos, devo dire, fa un lavoro egregio. Ma vorrei ricordare anche i molti progetti di ricerca nazionali e internazionali che Amos sta portando avanti. Cito soltanto i più recenti, il FIS del 2021, Space, su cui tra l'altro magari ci darà anche qualche informazione se avremo tempo, il PRIN da lui coordinato sugli itinerari filosofici e scientifici di Alberto Grande, da Baghdad a Parigi, che ci vede insieme in un gruppo di ricerca, devo dire anche molto ben affiatato. E lo stesso gruppo di ricerca, in una diversa combinazione, si ritrova in un altro progetto PRIN, in cui insiste appunto il laboratorio che ci vede così insieme da ormai 2 mesi e che è dedicato appunto alla divinazione e alle forme di previsioni del futuro medievali. Sono note le pubblicazioni di Amos, in particolare volevo ricordare la traduzione per la UTET della Metafisica di Avicenna, che ancora adesso è un punto di riferimento obbligato per chi si interessa non soltanto della filosofia di Avicenna, della filosofia araba, ma in generale della filosofia medievale, e anche della bellissima scuola di giovani studiosi e studiose che Amos da qualche anno cresce proprio a Lucca e che secondo me costituisce anche questo un importante contributo al panorama e alla ricerca nazionale ed internazionale. Con questo do subito la parola al nostro ospite, ricordando, come dicevo all'inizio, che questo è il penultimo incontro. L'ultimo incontro si terrà alla fine di maggio con il professore Sturlese che concluderà questo ciclo di seminari ritornando alla tradizione latina. Bene, prego Amos, do adesso a te la parola e poi come sempre alla fine della sua presentazione avremo un momento per condividere curiosità o anche per approfondire alcuni aspetti emersi durante il seminario. Prego.
Grazie, grazie Alessandra, davvero felice e onorato, ecco, di questa opportunità. Ti ringrazio davvero per la presentazione così generosa. Contraccambio, ecco, i sentimenti di amicizia, di stima, di collaborazione che hanno sempre, da tanti anni, contraddistinto, ecco, i nostri rapporti, i rapporti dei nostri gruppi di ricerca. Colgo l'occasione per ringraziare Giulio Navarra, che mi ha assistito, ecco, anche tecnicamente, insomma, per predisporre questo collegamento. Un saluto a tutti i partecipanti. Ho visto che c'è qualche partecipante di lingua straniera, quindi dopo questi saluti in italiano esporrò in inglese insomma, il testo del mio paper. So I switch to English and I welcome all the foreign guests. I'm very happy and honored to deliver this speech, which means basically to be a presentation of the result of a project. This is a project that was run first in Scuola Normale Superiore of Pisa and then here in Lucca at IMT School for Advanced Studies about the metaphysics of Avicenna. This project resulted in a preliminary edition, new edition of the Arabic text of Avicenna's metaphysics, the metaphysics of his most important philosophical summa, namely the Book of the Cure or of the Healing, the Kitab al-Shifa. And so, of course, there was a long preparation for this project, and the main task was to gather information about many manuscripts of the work, which are widespread in the world. So I am just going to illustrate and to explain the results of the project, taking as a vantage point its website. So I will run through the website together with you in order to pinpoint the main aspects of this project, and then we will arrive to the digital edition of the text. And then if we will have time before the discussion, I will focus on a specific case in which I try to show how it is important to pay attention to manuscripts and to try to establish a new critical edition when addressing an important philosophical text like Avicenna's Metaphysics. So I start sharing with you the screen. And now you should be able to see this website, okay? So you see the title of the project, and the fact that the edition is digital prompted us to name it Avicennet with the electronic A at the end. So the full title was Philosophy on the Border of Civilizations and Intellectual Endeavors Towards a Critical Edition of the Metaphysics, Ilayat of Kitab al-Shifa of Avicenna. As I said, this was a European project financed by the European Research Council for 5 years. And it involved, beside me, was a teamwork, of course, involved a very good number of scholars, both in the humanities and in computer sciences. Through the 5 years of the project, we arrived more or less to 20 people working on it. Together with external cooperations, we received a lot of material and also, let's say, intellectual help from many people who were so kind to provide advice, to provide material, to provide information on the topic of the project itself. So if you look at that, the credits, the contacts, and the term, and you find here the credits. These are the people directly involved, and you find a lot of name. But then, going back to the original website, we have the acknowledgements, which are endless, I would say. These are all the people who helped us in doing this, and it's also a nice opportunity to acknowledge this help we received. So this website is based on a big part regarding the manuscripts. And then there is later on at the bottom of the page, just to anticipate the go-to the edition. But I want first to show the preliminary work we did. So there was a lot of research to do on manuscripts. You have a section of bibliography. This is the list of the bibliographical references we accrued during the project. But I want to focus this part regarding manuscripts. There is a long introduction on the codicological research we did. And most of all, we arrived to establish a catalog of presently 306 manuscripts relevant to the project, divided into three main types of evidence, of witnesses. There are, first of all, the extant manuscripts, the manuscript that we are, I would say, sure that they are still preserved and lodged in some library, either public library or private library in the world, and which contain the Arabic text of Avicenna. Of some of them, we were able to retrieve scans, and in case that the library allowed us to publish the scans, we also published the digital reproduction of it. In some other cases, you see this clepsydra, and there are places like Herat in Afghanistan in which we know that probably a manuscript is there. Certain catalogs attest that the manuscript containing the Ilayat of the Shifa of Avicenna is there, but we were, for obvious reasons, unable to get a manuscript. Probably this heritage is dispersed, probably is destroyed, probably is on the black market. We don't know, but it's important to record also this manuscript, which could be lost. Then there are the attested manuscripts, which are 15 and are important because these are manuscripts about which other manuscripts speak. For example, there is in a colophon, especially in a colophon of certain manuscripts, you can find information on the antigraph of it, on the exemplar of it, on the model of it. And so, for example, in the manuscript Cairo Dar al-Kutub 144 Hikma, in the colophon, we find information of the manuscripts from which this Cairo manuscripts was copied. So it's exemplar. It's an important information to record because the exemplar of this manuscript very often is an old manuscript, probably lost, but attested by other manuscripts. Finally, there are 6 manuscripts which, together with the Persian translation of the Metaphysics of Avicenna, contain also the facing Arabic text. So it's a kind of face-to-face Persian translation of the Arabic. So these Persian manuscripts contain also important witnesses also of the Arabic text of it. I forgot to mention the importance, and everyone, I'm sure, knows the importance of Avicenna and the importance of the Metaphysics of his Shifa. It was a work translated into Latin very early in the 12th century, but it was also later on translated into Persian. So it's a work with very wide dissemination in terms of manuscript of the Arabic text, but also in terms of translations. And we will see that the Latin translation is retained in our edition as an important witness of the original text. We can, of course, surf this inventory by means of the country in which manuscripts are stored, or the specific cities or the libraries. We can also have place of copying, the information that we get. Some manuscript was, for example, copied in Baghdad, and so we record the place of copying, or the date of copying. We can also have a range of date from to, and to choosing the Islamic calendar. So if we go 17 to 18, no manuscripts, sorry, not attested but extant, we find one manuscript in this range. We can surf the catalog by means of the name of the copyist, or the name of the patron, or the name of the author, the owner. Importantly, we can also surf it according to the content of the Shifa. These are manuscripts which contains at least a portion of the metaphysics, but of course they might contain also other parts of the entire encyclopedia of Avicenna. So the Shifa, as you know, is made of logic, natural philosophy, mathematics, and metaphysics. We are interested in metaphysics in this project, but the manuscripts relevant for metaphysics very often contain also other parts of the Shifa. And so if we go, for example, for logic, and we are interested in the first, or let's say second part of it, the categories part, in the first treatise and in the first chapter, and if we go through search, we find all the manuscripts that contain that portion of the text. And this can be helpful for Avicennian scholars who work not only on metaphysics, but also on logic. Okay, another way of searching this catalog is through images. So in the previous case, we get information about the manuscript, but we can do the same search as before. Logic, part 2, categories, treatise 1, chapter 1. We run the search. In this case, we don't only see information about the manuscript, but we can enter into the manuscript and see that chapter. Yeah, we go Fazl, etc. regarding that text. So someone who is editing or wants to check a passage of the first chapter of the first treatise of the categories of the Shifa can consult this edition, finding a certain number of manuscripts containing it. Okay, this is a complete catalog. It is still open to addition. Of course, it's quite possible that other manuscripts will be found in the future. So we are open to enrich and to encompass also other manuscripts. I wanted just to give you an example of a manuscript from Oxford. This manuscript here, just to show you how each file regarding the manuscripts is made. And here we have some basic information on the manuscript itself, its location, the shelf mark, the work it contains. The only work it contains is the Shifa, but it could, of course, contain also other works, either of Avicenna or of other authors. You have the date of copying, the name of the copyist, and the relevant bibliography on it, which in this case is quite consistent. Some comments about it. We then have a part regarding its history, and so date of copying and the name of the copyist with the information. We have also information about his owners and comments about it. Then we can see that it contains the first 4 treatises of the Ilayat, of the Shifa, beside other elements like guard pages, frontispieces, etc. It's important also to pay attention to the notabilia. For example, if we go to the colophon, we can visualize here on the left the colophon of this manuscript, which in the right part of the page is transcribed in Arabic, is transliterated in Latin script, and is also translated. This is meant to be a kind of didactic tool for someone who wants, for example, to learn how to read the manuscript, how to transcribe a part of it, a relevant part of it, as the colophon. And from the colophon, we know that this manuscript was copied in the year 604 of the Hijra, of the Islamic calendar. So the intent of the projects were, of course, scientific, but also, you could say, didactic, of a kind of divulgation of material and of know-how about this material, which could be relevant for other scholars of Avicenna, for other researchers in Arabic philosophy. Of course, we did not build our edition on 306 manuscripts. There were too many, even for a team of 20 people. We arrived at a selection of 16 manuscripts. 16 manuscripts. These are the manuscripts which were selected. And so manuscripts from Egypt, from India, from Iran, the biggest part, from Iraq, Turkey, United Kingdom. 16 main witnesses that we were able to outline as the most important. How we did arrive to it? There was a big work that we did on the stemma codicum. Actually, we tried on specific samples of the work to collate all the manuscripts that were at our disposal at about half of the project. At half of the project, we decided that we had to start the edition, even though other manuscripts would have arrived later. We tried to collate on short samples taken from the beginning, the middle, and the end of the work, all the manuscripts at our disposal. And we were able to classify them into three main families. This Omega is the lost autograph of Avicenna, but there are three families, Alpha, Beta, and Gamma, which we were able, of course, to divide and to classify according to the usual standards of critical editions, namely by means of conjunctive errors. Within each of these three families, as you see, we selected those manuscripts which looked to us most important. These are the manuscripts marked in yellow for the Alpha family, in blue for the Beta family, and in green for the Gamma family. Our decision was made in order to be as representative as possible, but also we took into account the criterion of anciency of these manuscripts. So the date was also important when we had to choose between manuscripts pertaining to the same family. From this big work which is called General Stemma, we then arrived to the stemma called the stemma of selection. The 16 manuscripts selected are arranged here in this more linear stemma. Again, the Omega, the autograph of Avicenna, the family Alpha, Beta, and Gamma, with in capital letters the manuscript that were selected and their relationship in this stem. You notice beside the 16 sigla of the manuscripts also two other sigla, namely Lau and Lat. Lau is the work on metaphysics by Laukari, one of the most important disciples of Avicenna, who wrote a work which was a kind of synopsis or abridgment or summary of Avicenna's physics and metaphysics. The metaphysics was relevant to us since Laukari is very high in this chronological sequence as an important witness of the work, as Laukari was able to read it at this time. And then the Latin translation around the 12th century AD, corresponding to the 6th century of the Islamic era. So 16 manuscripts plus these two, let's say, witnesses of the indirect tradition, Laukari and the Latin translation. Okay, if going back to this section of other resources, of course, during our work of retrieving manuscripts containing at least a part of the metaphysics, we were also able to retrieve information on manuscript containing the logic, the natural philosophy, the mathematics, and the metaphysics itself, Mantik, Tabiyyat, Riyadiyat, and Hilayat. We deemed useful for other scholars to enlist these manuscripts, and for this reason, for example, we devised this list of manuscripts containing the logic of the Shifa. If someone in the future or in the present is interested to have an inventory of manuscripts or the logic, can consult this part of the project. The same for natural philosophy, for mathematics, and more widely for metaphysics. A special section was devoted to the Pocochi collection, the collection of manuscripts of Avicenna, Shifa, preserved in the Oxford Bodleian Library under the name of one of the first curators of the Arabic collection, Edward Pocochi. There are 16 in a collection originally of 25 manuscripts. Some of them are extant, and this collection contained in pieces the entire Kitab al-Shifa. It's an important piece of information, both with regard to its date, 6th century, the 7th century of the Islamic era, and also for the comprehensiveness, because originally this collection was meant to encompass the entire Shifa from the beginning to the end. And in this part regarding manuscripts, I want also to show you a gallery of images. We were in surfing manuscripts. We got really important information also about the illustrations preserved in these manuscripts. If I show you, for example, these I think can be relevant to inspect these images also for an historian of art, not only for a codicologist, because this kind of illustration, beside being magnificent in themselves, can be enlightening also for people studying, the way of artistic expression at the time of the composition of manuscripts like this. And the image gallery contains some samples of what can be found in a manuscript. It's an Indian manuscript with this magnificent golden basmala at the beginning. Okay. So this is the work we did about manuscript on the basis of the state of the art, which was, let's say, still incomplete. We record in this graph the knowledge about manuscript of Avicenna in time, starting with Brockelmann at the end of the 19th century. Only 7 manuscripts were known. In the second edition of the work, the manuscripts were 25. In the bibliography of Istanbul manuscript, drawn by Ergin in 1937-27, Anawati, more comprehensively, 63 manuscripts, Mahdavi, 77 manuscripts, and this is the inventory of manuscripts which is reproduced in Guta's second edition of the famous monograph and important monograph, Avicenna and the Aristotelian tradition. So we can say that until 2014, the state of the art comprehended 77 manuscripts. With the FIBOR project, we arrived to 291 plus the attested manuscript plus the manuscripts of the Persian translation. And it's possible that this line will continue in future years. It's interesting also the diachronic, the chronological disposition of manuscript. The brown color indicates the manuscript only attested. This blue or gray color indicate the manuscript preserved. And if we display them in a chronological sequence, we see that the very first manuscript are of the 11th century, a few decades after the death of Avicenna. Avicenna died in 1037, so we have ancient manuscripts at the end of the 5th century of the Hijra. Many of them are attested, but some of them are extant. Then you see more extant manuscript in the following century. And then you see this abrupt decrease here and this abrupt increase here in the 17th century. A decrease in the 14th century and an increase, incredible increase in the 17th. This is a kind of specimen of the history of Arabic philosophy in Central Asia at the time. We can take this abrupt decrease of the copy of manuscript in the 14th century as a consequence of the Mongol invasion and the Mongol conquest of Baghdad in the previous century, in the 13th. And Baghdad was the place in which the Shifa was more often copied. There was a kind of industrial production of copies of the Shifa in Baghdad in previous time. Of course, with the fall of Baghdad, it's normal that in the following century there was a collapse of the number of copies. What happens in the 17th century? These manuscripts are mainly Iranian manuscripts and are a sign of the Safavid, so-called Safavid Renaissance of culture and philosophy, and also philosophical culture under this dynasty at the time. Avicenna was chosen as a kind of champion of thought, and many manuscripts were therefore copied. It's interesting to see that we have still manuscript copies of the Ilayat of the Shifa in the 20th century. So this also tells us that the discovery of printing meant the end of the manuscript copying of manuscripts only in certain parts of the world, but not in the entire world. In other parts of the world, printing did not prevent manuscripts to continue to be copied until very recent time. And of course, the copy of a manuscript in an Islamic context is also a way of memorizing the content of the work, of getting familiar with it. It's also a way in which a work is believed to become known by the scholar dealing with it. We also displayed manuscript according to geography, and you can see that manuscript of the Ilayat of the Shifa and of the Shifa in general are spread across 4 continents at the moment. We do not have notice of manuscripts in Australia, but maybe in the future some library will in Australia will acquire, in Oceania will acquire manuscripts of Avicenna, and then we will have the 5 continents. For the time being, 4 continents are enough, so to say. The majority are in Central Asia, especially in Iran and in other areas, but there is a good number of manuscripts in libraries in Europe, in North Africa, Egypt, Tunisia, and Morocco, and also in North America. The type of libraries inserted in this map are library of which we have exact coordinates in green, library of which unfortunately we have still imprecise coordinates, very often because they are private libraries. And we can open a short digression about private libraries, which are the sign of the interest of a certain scholar about Avicenna, but which is also, these libraries are also a threatening mark of the possibility that after the death of this scholar, the manuscripts that he or she collected might be lost, maybe the inheritors of the patrimony of the father or of the mother will not take care too much of having manuscripts of Avicenna, and these manuscripts can be either sold or dispersed. So we have to be careful about the destiny of the manuscript funds of private libraries. We are also recording in this map the place of copying, both with the exact geographic coordinates or imprecise coordinates. In some cases, we have uncertain coordinates because we do not know with precision which is the city in which the colophon, to which the colophon of a certain manuscript refer. So we try to be as comprehensive as possible in this effort of systematizing the information we collected during the project. So, as we said, as I said before, the manuscript used for this edition are 16. The previous current edition, printed in Cairo in 1960, contained either 5 or 6 manuscripts. I say either 5 or 6 because in the Prolegomena, the Cairo editors say that they are using 5 manuscripts, but then in the critical apparatus, you find not 5, but 6 sigla. And I was able to discover that this 6th siglum was referring to another manuscript of Cairo, which were used by the editors. And the Cairo editors of 1960 were using 5 manuscripts from Cairo and 1 manuscript from the British Museum in United Kingdom. So also the geographical span, not only the number, but also the geographical span of the manuscripts was very limited. Egypt and United Kingdom. Now with the new edition, we can enlarge the number of 16 manuscripts, but also we are able to widen also the geographical span of it, going from United Kingdom until India, Iraq, Iran, and Turkey, and the other places, Egypt itself, and the other places you have seen. So it's time to enter into the edition. Then any clarification can be done in the following discussion. So we go to it, and we find first of all some introductions. First of all, an introduction to the edited work, introduction to the Ilayat of the Shifa, just to give some coordinates about the importance, the content, the structure of this work. So the introduction to the edited work, the introduction to the edition, our criteria, the guidelines that we used in editing this work, how we built the apparatus criticus, how was our idea of punctuation structure, how we decided to deal with graphic peculiarities, etc. And then we go to the text, divided into the title of the work, which is an important element of it. We sometimes we do not pay attention to, and we take for granted the meaning of the title of a work. But for the Kitab Shifa, there is an important precision to make. We still don't know precisely what Shifa means, or better, the two greatest scholars of Avicenna of recent years, Michael Marmura and Dimitri Gutas, translate Shifa differently. Marmura translates it as healing. Gutas translates it as cure. And of course, healing and cure are not, unfortunately, the same, in the sense that there can be cures without healings, and sometimes, fortunately, there are healings without cures. It's an important issue, so the title should attract the attention of the scholar. Beside the title, there is the division in the 10 treatises of the work, and I take the still provisional treatise 1 as an example. The treatise 1 itself has an introduction pointing at the content of it and with some footnotes. But then I want to show you the text, the Arabic text of it. This is the Arabic text. We will arrive at the moment to these graphic devices that we use. I wanted to show let's say, the complements of the Arabic text, which are the apparatus of variants. This is a section of notes which can consider the commentary on the text. We then have the English translation, and this is Marmura's English translation adjusted according to the new Arabic text that we are proposing in the edition. Then we have the Latin medieval translation, this important witness of the work of which we have spoken, and this is the Van Riet edition without any modification. Then we provide the list of differences between our edition and the Cairo current edition of the work for the first treatise, and this is, as you can see, a very, 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 very long list of variants with respect to the previous edition. They are more or less 300 corrections only for the first treatises, and we can estimate that we can have like more than 1,000, maybe 1,500 corrections for the entire text. And then the legend, the explanation of these symbols that we use in the edited text. So the text starts with the number of folio and 293 recto is the foliation of the manuscript that we take as relevant. This is the P manuscript, namely the Poco-key manuscript 125, which was taken as the starting point of our work. We transcribed the text of this manuscript and we used that text of manuscript P as the basis for the collation. And then number 3 is the pagination of the ADC edition Cairo, the Cairo edition, the standard edition. So any scholar can retrieve, can compare our page here with the page, the corresponding page of the Cairo edition. And then there are variants, indication of variants, either with an empty circle or with a full circle. The empty circle indicates the single textual variant. For example, in this case, this note of apparatus tells us that ADC, the Cairo edition, before our Basmala, before our Bismillah, adds something else. Al-Makala Lula, wa fiha Zamaniyat Fuzulin. There is an indication of the treatise and of the number of chapters. Then there is this little square, which indicates that a certain witness that we use for other parts of the work is missing here, is lacking here. And this is manuscript N, which is the Iraq Najaf manuscript. Then we have the full circle, and which is an indication of not of a single variant, but of a multiple, we could say variant. And this is the Basmala with the normal expression that we find in manuscript, but in the Cairo edition in ADC we have a longer Basmala, and with some comments about it. Then we find another single variant regarding a certain point, etc. Interesting, this ang and ing and lat. So if one click on this button, finds immediately switches from the apparatus and the notes to the English translation or to the Latin translation of the passage at stake. Finally, if we continue, we find this kind of symbol, which is the indication of a note of explanation, a kind of commentary, which is related to the expression al-falsafa al-ula, first philosophy, which is the subject matter of first philosophy, which is taken into account here. I call your attention on this term here, ayyiyatuhu, because it will be the example of correction that we are providing with the relevant effects on the understanding of the text, about which I will speak in a moment. If we go to the notes, then go back to the apparatus and then to the notes, we find in some of them a symbol like this, which is a reference to the bibliography that we have, bibliographical entry that we have in the project. The same here. Every time that we quote an author, we give the bibliographical reference of the work on the current edition of it. And finally, there is, as an instrument useful for the edition, the TEI versions of it, text encoding initiative. This is a kind of universal language according to which digital text should be provided. But I want to show you the search engine. If we digit here text like existence, for example, in Latin script, we find 48 occurrences of this term in the note and 153 in the English translation. And we can click on it, be patient a moment, and then we can find with these yellow arrows all the passages in which the term occurs. The same for the English translation. You have here. But we can do this the same also with, for example, the transliteration of an Arabic term. We go, no, not in the English translation, of course, but if we go in the notes, for sure we find some instances of niya, these terms about which I will tell you something in a moment, and the complete list. Of course, the same applies for Arabic. We can digit also the Arabic text, for example. Not in notes, in Arabic text. And we find the same the term fazl, chapter, in all the occurrences in which it occurs. Fazl is chapter, but also differential, specific differences. So it can have both structural importance, but also conceptual importance. This is more or less the main results of the project. Of course, this is an ongoing project. It will take some more time to finish properly the work, but we cared very much in grounding the foundation, so that maybe in the future there can be refinement, developments, but the basic material and the basic, let's say, instrumentation, both technical and conceptual, the stemma codicum, the scans of manuscripts are available. Currently at the IMT Lucca there is a research unit devoted to this kind of research, and of course this is an archive of information, bibliographical and codicological, which can be used and is used by other scholars of Avicenna. We can go back then to this website, but I would like to show why a new critical edition was necessary. I have already told you that 300 corrections in the first treatises, and from the sheer number of corrections, we understand that a new critical edition was needed. I want also to pinpoint the philosophical relevance of this editorial task that we did. And so I interrupt this sharing, and I will share another document in a second. And sorry, this is in Italian, but I'm sure it will be clear. It will be clear in English as well. So this is, we are in the title of the first chapter of the first treatise. We are at the very beginning of the Ilayat of the Shifa. And we have this expression, fazlun fidiptida talab maudoi al-falsa falula li tabayyana or li tabyin inniyatuhu filulum. Li tabyin inniyatihi, we should vocalize. Olita tabayyana inniyatuhu filulum. This is the punctuation. This is the Cairo edition of it. There are many things to notice. First of all, the very spelling of this term inniya is probably wrong. In Arabic, this term should be spelled as anniya. but there is more to say about it. Interesting to see what the Latin translation makes of this title. In English, you could say chapter about the beginning of the search of the subject matter of first philosophy, in order that its annia or its innia becomes clear. It's innia in the sciences. Then we will see what this term annia or innia means. The Latin capitulum de inquisitione subiecti prime philosophia ad hoc ut ostendatur ipsa esse, namely first philosophy, prima philosophia, ipsa esse de numero scienziario, the one of the sciences. In our edition, in the Fibor edition, we have another reading of this term, thanks to the manuscripts that are preserving this reading, which according to us is a better reading. And we have faslum fi ibtidai talabi maudui al falsafatilula li tatabayyana, and we read ayyiyatuhu filulum. If you compare this term here, ayyiyatuhu, with this one, inniyatuhu, you notice that the difference is only given by a point above the letter here, and 2 points instead below the letter here. So this means that since in manuscripts not always the punctuation was reported, in many manuscripts these two terms could be mixed one with the other, could be confounded. So why we opted for ayyiya instead of anniya? Anniya means basically, especially in Avicenna's Ergon, existence. And the Latin has quite nicely translated anniya as ipsa esse, its existence, the fact that it is, that first philosophy is among the sciences. But this title does not make any sense, because Avicenna would devote a chapter to inquiring the subject matter of first philosophy with the following aim: in order to show that metaphysics, if we take anniya or inniya as the correct reading, that the metaphysics exists as one of the sciences. But this is not something that Avicenna definitely wants to show. He takes for granted that the metaphysics exists as one of the sciences. And so we regarded ayyiya, this second term, so similar to anniya, as the correct one. What does ayyiya means is from ayyun, which. So ayyiya means properly witchness. In Italian, in my Italian translation, capitolo riguardante l'inizio della ricerca del soggetto della filosofia prima, affinché risulti chiara non la sua esistenza, ma la sua qualità distintiva tra i soggetti delle scienze. And this is exactly what Avicenna wants to do in this first chapter. Marmura's translation, revised by us, is chapter 1 on beginning to seek after the subject matter of first philosophy, so that its witchness among the sciences become evident. And this gives, according to us, a much better meaning. It's not that Avicenna wants to argue for the existence of a discipline which he has already taken into account from the beginning of his intellectual career, starting from his autobiography. But he wants to show which is the distinctive traits of metaphysics with respect to all the other sciences, namely the fact that metaphysics as being qua being or existent qua existent as a subject matter, that metaphysics is the apical discipline in the system of knowledge, and so forth and so on. So this is just to give you an example of how much a very teeny difference in Arabic, namely not a point above the letter, but 2 points below it, can make a great difference in meaning as far as the philosophical content of the work is concerned. And I think I have spoken for about 1 hour. I thank you very much for your attention so far, and I'm definitely ready to receive your feedback, your comments, your questions, if you have any. Thanks very much for your attention.
Thank you, Amos, very much for your inspiring presentation. It's very rich in information and detail, but also clear.